no good. Rebounded by Anthony. 2 seconds left. Anthony for the win. Cody rolls it. Cole Anthony gives the Magic a victory.
Close Up Magic.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Close Up Magic. I'm your host, Stephen Cameron. And as always, we got Malik Grady. What's going on, man? How you doing, bro?
Living the dream. Just had a great Halloween evening with the family, seeing the kids all dressed up and getting out and about, watching them inhale candy, all that kind of crap. So definitely doing well.
What were the outfits?
My daughter was kind of old school Harley Quinn. So
Nice.
She got kind of the old kind of jester outfit. She had a little hat and everything like that. My son was Venom. So
Cool.
he had his whole pose going on with that. They didn't wear their masks for school or anything like that, but had a really good time. It's just a lot of fun watching them get into it and everything. So that's the best.
That's awesome. We brought Chloe, who just turned 7 months a few days ago.
Wow.
We brought her to her daycare today dressed up. She had like a orange onesie on that had like a little jack-o'-lantern face on it, and then her pants were black, and they had black jack-o'-lanterns all with like skulls and stuff on it, like kind of decked out.
Want to eat her up.
Yeah, it's pretty cute, man. And we actually tried to take her out this evening and look at some houses, but she was not having it. She was a little tired. She doesn't always sleep good on Mondays at her daycare, but we're not going to go down those details because half our listeners probably don't even have kids. But overall, doing well as well, and it's glad it's Halloween. For the listeners who are tuning in and viewers watching, we're recording this Monday, October 31st, almost November by the time we're recording this for East Coasters. But we are. If I sound a little bit different, I forgot my adapter for my microphone at work, and so we're just recording straight to the computer. So I apologize about the audio, but hopefully it's still pretty clear and clean for you all to get through. Let's get into the nitty-gritty before we get into the magic. First off, season's here, merch is here. See my hat? It's covering up my bald head. Check it out. I've been wearing this hat pretty regularly now for about a month. The shirt, I'm not wearing it right now, but also a Close Up Magic shirt. I've washed it probably 4 or 5 times now. It's holding up fantastic. Very reasonable prices. Check out the merch. It is in the show notes. Right, like pretty high up in the top. It's in the show notes. So make sure you check out the merch page if you want to get yourself some merch. Helps us a little bit. And it gets you looking swagged out for games if you're going to games or just want to feel cool on the couch watching a game. This podcast is sponsored by 19 Media Group. They support this show a lot. They helped us get merch. They help us do some other things that are happening on the back end that you all will see coming up here soon. But check them out. Tons of good podcasts out there. Check out the Gimmick Infringement if you guys are wrestling fans. I know there's quite a few of you out there, and wrestling's been picking up recently. So check out the Gimmick Infringement. They are awesome. They do a great weekly show. Last but not least, always subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd really appreciate that. We're slowly creeping our way up to being able to monetize. So the more you subscribe, the easier it is for us to get there. And as soon as we can monetize, the more cool stuff we can do for you guys. And speaking of monetizations, Patreon. We have a handful of Patreon subscribers. We appreciate you. You guys are helping us out a lot. Really, really soon, you guys are going to see the effects of that directly, particularly for the YouTube subscribers. You all will see effects of the Patreon page helping us improve our quality. And really soon, probably the next episode, we're going to be announcing a giveaway, and that is going to be directly for the Patreon subscribers. So if you're not subscribing now, go ahead. And consider that. It's going to be the very first thing you see in the show notes is the Patreon link. There's a couple of different tiers. One is $5 a month. The other one is $10 a month, different levels of access. Mostly what it's doing is helping us give back to you and build a cool community. Really trying to build out. Yeah. We appreciate the support and we thank you for it. So Malik, before we move on, anything you want to say towards any of that?
No, just excited as always to continue to engage with our fans, the people that listen to us. We're one of a number of Magic podcasts. We bring something kind of specifically different in the way we go back and forth. in the way that we have guests and all that kind of thing. So, we think we bring an important service, and we know some people really believe in us and have always believed in us, and we just want to reach out to those people, connect with them as much as possible, and we appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Let's get into it. The Magic last night lost to the Mavericks. They are 1-6. Some cool news has come out. Some concerning news has come out. So first, let's get to the good news. The good news is, as of about 5 hours ago today, so yesterday when you guys are hearing this conversation, Jalen Suggs got updated from out to questionable for tomorrow's game versus Oklahoma City Thunder. So that's exciting. I don't know if I'm going to expect him to play tomorrow, but that means he's going to be playing any game now, in my opinion. Malik, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, to me, it's nice to see him upgraded fully from out all the way to questionable rather than going to doubtful or anything like that. There wasn't because doubtful is where he's not expected to play. Questionable is, just a smidge away from probable, which is a smidge away from, hey, he's playing. Yeah. So I feel good about the possibility of him playing tomorrow night, just knowing the kind of player he is, that right or wrong, he's a guy that will fight through any pain, a limp, tell the doctors what they need to hear to get out there. He's just that kind of player. So if he's convinced them that he's healthy enough to be at this level, I think he's pretty close to playing and all. I didn't expect him to be the first one back out of all our 6 guys off. We were hoping for Markel. I think Gary Harris should be back any minute now, but we'll welcome anyone we can get, because right now we're just 1 or 2 players away from having more of a normal rotation. Right now we're on this bare bones 11 guys active type of a thing, and trying to get things done. So I'm really excited to see him and what he brings, even if he's off the bench, defensively, playmaking. So you can maybe not play your Schofield, maybe not play some of these guys that you're giving kind of heavy minutes to, play a little bit more of an NBA level player. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and it's really good timing too right now, because if you look at our coming schedule, if he does play versus Oklahoma City Thunder, that's someone to throw at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yes.
If he comes back later in the week on Thursday, someone to throw on Stephen Curry and Jordan Poole, and all those amazing guards that the Warriors have. Later in the week, there's the Sacramento Kings, De'Aaron Fox, another electric fast point guard who's having a really good season so far. And so it's like, there's some really good guards coming up in those next 3 games. It dials back a little bit, but I'm sorry, I'm looking at our schedule. It doesn't really dial back much. We need all the defensive help we can get in that guard rotation right now. And if you watched the Mavericks game, you saw how they were just putting Luka on the guards and just letting him abuse Terrence Ross. They were switching onto him. We were putting Terrence Ross on him. It's just like between their switches and our defensive play, plan during that game, it just was not going well for our guard defense to being that first layer before it got to the forwards. And it'll be really nice to get Suggs back, who is, his offense is still kind of figuring things out, but his defense is real. And so we need that. And I'm really looking forward to just having this team have a few extra bodies available. Before we get more into just like team availability and the roster and stuff like that, let's get into one more injury. Cole Anthony, let me get the wording correct. All right. And by the way, both these announcements about Jalen Suggs and Cole Anthony were announced by Kobe Price today. So I just want to shout out the credit right there. So this message, this update is about Cole Anthony. His injury is now being classified as a right internal oblique tear, which before it was classified as right internal oblique injury. So it's a tear. It's not just like a bruise or something like that. So it might
sounds more serious.
He might be out for a minute, which really sucks. So there's no timelines, and we haven't had like any news releases or even media sessions since those have come out. Now, granted, we might have some. I imagine there might be some questions about that in the next game or so, just because it has been changed and we are down so many players. So I'm hoping that some reporters might ask that, and hey, it might even be our reporter because we have CJ Hill going and he's going to be covering the Warriors game on Thursday. And if the time is right, maybe he'll ask that question. But we would be nice to get an update there. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of days. Let's just talk about injuries and where we're at with this roster right now, Malik. I know you had some thoughts on that, so I'm just going to pass it to you.
Yeah, well, one thing you mentioned about with Jalen Suggs, you specifically said about how much he can help the team defensively. When you look at kind of the defensive ratings and that type of thing, even now, after only playing 2 games, he is like number 1 on the team in terms of the top defensive rating, right below somehow Bo. I don't know how that works. Somehow the team defends well when he's on the court. But just to have that kind of a guy on the court, I think could really, work some wonders and all. In terms of other guys coming back, there's a number of gentlemen who should be back on the court, just looking at normal calculations as to how long their injuries should have kept them out, how the calendar has gone, and when we should expect them. You start off with a guy like, Gary Harris. Gary Harris had his meniscotomy, that is the surgery on his meniscus, on September 1st. And usually that is an injury that takes like 6 to 8 weeks to recover. 8 weeks would be 8 weeks for him would have been last Thursday. So he's definitely should be raring to go. Now, I spoke with Kobe Price. He was saying that perhaps there was an issue with him not being able to get practice time since he's been maybe cleared. So, and since they were on the road, and maybe that's something to do with why he hasn't been cleared yet. So hopefully anything of that, of a logistical nature, those hurdles can be cleared sooner than later, and we can actually get him on the court is sometime soon. Hopefully this week. I keep waiting to see his name on there. Like I said, he could have been on there 2 weeks ago, but to not see him at all, unless there's been some sort of a setback, which could have happened, I think he should be on the court sometime soon. Similar thing for Marco Fultz, who's I think it was September 26th, something like that, when his injury, his broken fractured toe was reported. The recovery time for a big toe fracture like that for basketball players anywhere between 2 and 8 weeks. So it's kind of a weird timeline, because there's issues in terms of pain tolerance and how much that affected the foot and that kind of thing. But 8 weeks from when his injury was announced would be November 21st. Next Monday will be 6 weeks from when his toe was reported. So we're right in that window when any minute now we could see an overnight change in his status, like we did with Jalen Suggs, where suddenly one night you see nothing, the next night you see upgraded to questionable for the next game, that kind of thing. So I'm anxiously waiting to see, especially Gary Harris and Marco Fultz. We don't have timelines for Moritz Wagner, no timelines for JI, because we don't know the nature of what's keeping them out. But again, to get Suggs back now, and also think Harris and Fultz should be back very soon, and suddenly you're dealing from a position of strength where you have a team that somehow, for a while, basically only needs one guard because of the way they're playing with so many bigs. To suddenly get 1, 2, 3 guards back, you can actually have some options. You can go small, you can go big, and have those things happen and all. So should be some good news coming up soon. A homestand is on its way, so hopefully that matters as well. Yeah,
I wanted to touch back on what you were saying a little bit with Kobe about the practices and not being able to get practices in. And I just I just want people to remember that, first off, NBA teams don't practice a lot in general when season is in play. There's very limited practices. There's restrictions that the players union puts in place with the league for how many days they can actually practice. And then when you're on the road, there's like mandatory rest days they have to have. And when you are on the road, you're practicing at you're often not practicing at state-of-the-art places like you would at your home gym, particularly ours, which is the best of the best. But so I guess all I'm trying to say is I don't know what a road what a road practice looks like versus a home practice looks like. They might not be doing some of the same things they would if they were practicing at Amway versus in Cleveland, where we know they had a practice, right? So there is a truth to wanting to evaluate and see players come back in practice before they just stick them on the court and get after that. We would hear Clifford talk about this often. I think even last year, Mosley might even talked about, wanting to get him in a couple practices before they just let him play again. Yeah. And so that very well could be something going on with Gary Harris, with Markelle Fultz. A lot of these guys are traveling with the team now. So that's really cool and really encouraging. I do wonder about Suggs and why, I think maybe the guys are doing a shoot around, or they might have had a practice today in OKC. That's probably why he went from questionable or from out to questionable. I was after this practice. I bet if I had to put my finger on it. But we'll see as the guys have a couple more practices as they get to this homestand coming up, where they are going to be able to get in the gym a little bit more as some of those travel restrictions are lifted off of them, that we might see some more guys hopefully go from out to questionable and whatnot. So I just wanted to kind of remind fans that if they're not practicing, these guys aren't going to come back most likely. They need to get in rhythm with the team and see how they can play 5 versus 5 and on contact and all that stuff. Just doing a shoot around and watching film while you're traveling isn't always going to be the key that gets an injured player off the injury list. So,
yeah, especially because I think the Magic do want to be conservative. If there's a question, they're like, oh, push it off a day, push it off a game, push it off a week, even because they're focused on improving the team, being more competitive, but they're looking more towards long-term type of goals and that kind of thing, which can be frustrating. But it's hard to fully argue against it, because it's not like they're like, well, we want to put our players at risk, we want to do this. They were trying to do things the right way, but when there's so many guys out, it's kind of like, dang, we got to get one of these guys back out here. What are we doing? What I'm saying?
We know the front office.
Sorry. No, I think they should have had Gary Harris maybe practicing a couple of weeks before now. If that was the case, and you should have been aiming to have him ready at that 8-week mark. So I'm a little frustrated by that. I don't know what's going on. Again, there might have been a setback. I don't know, but that frustrated me to hear and to kind of chat about that with Kobe. So yeah,
I don't know if there's a setback. I think it's more or less the front office doesn't have the same type of motivation as some other teams would be to get their guys back on the court as fast. If they already have their mindset of, if someone gets injured, we're going to let them get to 100%, 110 before, to where, maybe next season when certain goals have shifted, maybe it's, we get you good enough and then you go out and play because winning is really the goal. And this year, maybe winning is some part of the goal and maybe it's not the goal. Maybe it's a little bit of two things there. So, and I think you can have winning as a priority, but also other things which be a priority as well, which would cause them not to rush guys back. So I think there's a little bit of both going on where it's okay, we really do need some bodies back. But at the same point, we're just going to get through this anyways and let guys get back to 100. I don't know if they have the same motivation as they might in the future.
I mean, I do get frustrated that every time something goes a little awry or isn't quite the way people expect, that there's this there's a certain segment of Magic fans that are continually going, oh, well, this is a tank maneuver. This is something that they're doing to tank. And it's this lineup is a tank lineup. This move here, this guy, that's because they're trying to tank. And I don't think it's that insidious. I really don't. I don't think it's something where it's well, we're just it's just a little frustrating for me for that to be the go-to thing. Like everything isn't about tanking. Sometimes there's just stuff happens, or what do you expect from this particular group of guys or what have you. So I get frustrated from that a little bit. I would say, yeah.
I hear your frustration. I think from the Magic fans that might be saying that, and I sometimes have those feelings too, and so maybe this is partly also coming from where my thought process is if winning was the absolute goal this season, I think we would see guys come back from injuries a little bit sooner, right? I don't think they'd be waiting for them to get to 110. They'd probably wait for them to get to like 85, 90. Like, cool, you'll heal up when we're not physically playing a game kind of deal, but we need you on the floor. I think rotations would be, I know our guys are really banged up and there's not a lot of options, but I feel like we'd probably be running a tight 9-man rotation, on a regular game. And I just, and I feel like that's kind of where we're at now. I think before, game 3, game 4, when we weren't as banged up, yeah, man, like there were some really weird lineups for people to kind of get into those mindsets. Now there's, like you do make a great point, in the Mavs game, we played 10 out of 11 guys that were available. That's not a lot of options when you only have 11 guys.
And one of them was Admiral Schofield, and he played 4 minutes. I mean, and I know those 4 minutes were tough, but there was like no speculation. They were like, oh, well, there was a lineup that was played a lot of minutes with Schofield and Bamba, this, that, and the other. And I looked it up, and that lineup played exactly 2 minutes in the game.
Yeah.
It was like, I know when you see stuff out there, it feels like it's an eternity, and it feels like a calculated move, but it's not. I don't think it's as bad as people think, especially considering who's available. Like there's, DJ Augustin and Penny Hardaway aren't on the end of the bench. There are bums down there, and they're coming on the court. There's no good guys coming in.
There's something to be said when you have you see other teams get into this situation instead of staying at this 10-man rotation. Or 9.5 for the handful of minutes that some guys will get occasionally. It's like you see them stick to 9. You see them stick to sometimes even smaller 8. We saw the Rockets used to run 8-man rotations when they start to get banged up a little bit, and some other teams just get real tight. And I think it's okay the Magic are not doing that, because ultimately, as much as we want to win the season as fans, I don't think winning is the goal enough to rack up guys' minutes that high by compressing the rotation that small in this situation, right? Like, right. You probably don't want to be pushing some of these starters close to 40 minutes right now. Like, it's game 7 in the start of the season. These guys need to last to game 82. And the starters and some of these bench players, now granted, you could pump up some of the bench players who are only getting, 15 to 20 minutes per game, a little bit more in my opinion. But like if you're compressing the lineup altogether, you're not also that also affects the starters who have to fill in some of those other roles when you're not playing a 9 or 10-man rotation. And so it's like, this is where I think it's just like they're trying to win. Yes. But are they trying to win at all costs? Probably not. Is it a tank move? Probably not. But are we 100% trying to win? No. So I feel like it's kind of like that middle ground where they're just trying to survive. Not tanking, not necessarily winning is the main focus.
Well, and I would also point out that guys like Paolo, who had that horrible sweating issue last year, and there's been questions about his stamina. Wendell Carter Jr. at his size, Franz Wagner in his second year. I mean, these are guys that are learning how to play huge minutes. Yeah. I don't think they're quite there where it's like, hey, we're going to drop 40 minutes on you, bro. Just figure it out, Yeah. And but even with that said, Paolo and WCJ both played 32 minutes last night. Yeah. Franz played 35 minutes, which for them, that's a lot of minutes. I mean, that's more minutes than they're usually playing. And even Bol Bol, who's played a handful of games in his career, he topped his career high again with 29. For him, that's an eternity. That's basically like 3 games worth for him in the past years. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like they weren't trying to extend the minutes of some of their starters. It's just I do think there's a bit of a limit for where these guys are in their careers, and also just again, there aren't enough great players to be able to have some of those tight lineups you'd like to have. Because ideally, if you're bringing Malcolm Brogdon off the bench, sure, that guy, or Derek White off the bench, and that guy plays 20, 30 minutes, that's different than Chuma Okeke or Caleb Houston or Kevon Harris. Like those guys, you really want to extend their minutes so you can go to 8 or 9. I'm not quite as sure at all. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm headed on that kind of thing.
I just wanted to point out while you were saying some of that, I was starting to look up on Basketball Reference some guys' minutes, and if you saw me kind of looking off screen, that's what I was doing at. I just looked up Franz, Paulo, and Wendell Carter Jr.'s minutes. Franz and Paulo are averaging 33 minutes per game over the 7 games
Nice.
period so far. Wendell Carter Jr. is averaging 32 minutes per game, which makes sense because there's Bol and Mo Bamba to also take a minute or two here and there. Let's see what Terrence Ross is, just because I'm curious,
30.9, which is
30.9, which is that's interesting.
That might be a career high for him.
No, his first year here, he averaged 31 minutes that second half of the season. But yeah, he's had a 29. But it is his career high. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Or if you don't count
those
that 24
games with
Magic,
the Magic,
yeah. So it's just it just goes to show that there's they're playing decent minutes. Most people want guys playing starters playing just above 30 minutes to start the season per game, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I
yeah,
think they're kind of ramping up. The
Yeah.
guys are playing more minutes, and I think if this was a month from now, I think you could say, "Hey, listen, Franz, WCJ, Paolo, you're going to play 36, 38 minutes tonight," and they better go. Okay, let's get it done, because they would have their win to them. But a couple weeks in the season, I just don't think that they're quite there. So it's kind of a perfect storm in some ways.
And let's continue this kind of like minutes topic, but kind of shifted a little bit too. And
Sure.
I want to talk about Franz for a second, and Paulo and Wendell and all these guys, right? These guys don't have a point guard on the floor. They haven't had Cole Anthony, who some people don't even consider a point guard, even though he can
exhausted.
Run, right?
Yeah.
We don't have Franz, or sorry, not Franz. We don't have Fultz on the floor, who is the guy we want. We don't have Suggs, so they're missing facilitator help, which means we see it. Franz is having to really do a lot of operating on the offense.
Last year spinning the ball up. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah, but they're playing a little bit out of their role. I forget who I was listening to. It might have been 6-Man Show guys, and I really thought this was a good point that Jonathan and Luke made. They were talking about how we were often upset with Evan Fournier and Vooch and AG and that whole generation. I think they were specifically talking about Evan Fournier, but they were talking about how we were annoyed with them for not being able to live up to what we were asking them to do. And that's because all of them were being asked to play a role that was larger than what they were capable of, because we didn't really have that true go-to guy on the team, right? And so we're asking Fournier, who should be a fifth option in the starting lineup, to be that go-to guy, as or the number 2 behind Vooch. We're asking Vooch, who should be the number 3 guy on a team, at least back then. He's kind of, a little bit, to be the number 1, AG to be the number 2 or the number 3 when he should be your 4th or 5th option on a team. And we're kind of getting to that right now with our starters, right? Franz is having to play full-time point, which I know we want Franz to run a little bit of point. That's good, but I don't want him to be the full-time point. Like, what makes Franz special? Yes, is his, huh?
You don't want him to have to do it. You want it to be an option.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that's what I was getting at. Is like, what makes Franz special is his ability to play off ball with his smart cutting, his movement, being able to catch and shoot, but also his ability to be a on-ball playmaker. And right now, we're not getting the first half of what I just said. We're only getting the on-ball playmaking because that's what he has to do all the time. Paulo, who is played 7 NBA games in his entire career. It's trying to also run an offense when it's not in Franz's hands. And we see these guys, it's starting to get to them a little bit. Like if we look back at this Mavericks game, I don't have the box score right in front of me, but I think like Franz went, his offensive percentages shooting wise were horrible. Malik, if you could pull this up while I'm talking real quick, that'd be great. And then we saw Paulo almost foul out of the game. He, in the fourth quarter, he had 5 fouls. I think with like 8 or 10 minutes left to go. And so he was one of the last starters to get back into the rotation, with his 5 fouls. And maybe those fouls were a little bit sooner in the game. Maybe they're closer to the end of the third. I don't quote me on this. I don't have the box score right in front of my face right now. But you could really see, granted, they're also going up against a red hot Mavs team that, was disappointed in how they lost to Oklahoma the night before. But, I'm just giving this example as we lost. Part of that is because these guys are having to do too much and they don't have quality teammates next to them. And so I don't think playing Paulo and Franz 38 minutes, 40 minutes last night was going to make or break them winning. They probably lose just as bad because those guys are tired. They might have fouled out. I doubt if Franz's efficiency wasn't improving at that point, they probably still wasn't going to. So I just wanted to bring that comment out about these guys are, they need help.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great point. Like you said, against Dallas, Paulo got in the foul trouble. Franz was trying to do some things out there, and you saw them kind of wearing down, even just, I don't know if it's just mentally a little bit, because
totally they're tired. I'm sure
to be on the edge.
Holds back too.
Yeah, and what's funny is that even just having one more guy, definitely 2 or 3, but one more guy would make such a difference. So you wouldn't have last night, like I said, 24 minutes. Kevon Harris, 17 minutes. RJ Hampton, 21 minutes and stuff. If one of those guys is replaced, ball. No. What I'm saying, if one of those guys is replaced or alongside a Gary Harris or Jalen Suggs, suddenly one of those guys that people are saying, hey, this guy, you're putting him in the tank. All of a sudden, that guy didn't see the floor. He's just chilling on the bench, hanging out, and no one says jack.
And all we have to do is complain about Mosley's substitution patterns.
I mean,
not the players on the floor. Sorry.
I mean, there's definitely some weirdness, and there's definitely some meat left on the bone. There's sometimes where something will work early in the game, and you're like, man, we should go back to that, and you don't see it come back to that those kind of things. But some of the there aren't some strategic things that you'll see. You won't see certain guys targeted. That there will be poor defenders that everyone in the league knows are poor defenders that don't get targeted, and to which you're like, okay, man, this guy, you need to do a pick and roll so Paulo can go at this guy every single time because this guy's awful. Everyone knows he thinks defensively, but you don't see that. And those type of targeted things that every coach does, in the league, where it's like when Terrence Ross is out there, guy's going to put him in a pick and roll and then go at his behind. And we don't do the same thing to other teams strategically. Now, maybe we will, but right now we're not, and it's leaving some meat on the bone. There are times that, Paulo could do a 4 or 5 pick and roll. Every center he's played so far, he has cooked. Cooked. Yep. He took out there were 3 centers that Charlotte played against him. It was Nick Richard, PJ Washington, and they brought in, I think it was it Cody Zeller or whatever? One of the guys, Plumlee.
Yeah.
He was juicing all 3 of those fools in the half court, just going by him, getting the shoulders by, layup, and one, just making them look awful. Now, I'm not saying you want to play full-time center, but if you can get a center covering him, it is a good day for Paulo. There's no center in the league. I mean, maybe Embiid, maybe, I don't know, some of these top guys, if Giannis is playing the center. But most centers in the league, Paulo's gonna freaking juice him and make him look foolish out there. So.
I want to add on to that too, because in the fourth quarter, one of the things, like in this Mavericks game, one of the things that was annoying is in the first half we did pretty well with ball movement. The ball was moving and stuff like that. Second half, and this was coaching. Our boy Richard was sitting right behind the Magic bench, could hear what Coach Mosley was saying to the guys. He was calling for Paulo to ISO a lot in that fourth quarter. And it's like, how about instead of ISOing, we have like another guard out there, or we run some plays that are not necessarily ISO. It's more like pick and roll attack with him and Wendell Carter Jr. or someone else. And it would be
nice
to
get Terrence Ross open for some shots. Yeah.
I understand the concept of what the dribble handoff, read and react type of system, that Mosley loves to run, but it does frustrate me that, when guys are struggling, or there is opportunities for mismatches, or we need to find a way to get a guy going early into the game where he's had maybe a couple bad games, like I wish he would run more plays. That's been something the whole time that I've just been kind of annoyed as. We just don't run enough set plays to get certain people involved or accomplish certain things within the system. And so I'm hoping that maybe as this team gets a little bit healthier, and as the season goes on, as they expand the offense even more, that hopefully we'll get into that type of stuff a little bit sooner. Because it would be nice to see some set plays for some other guys that can cook. It'd be really good.
Yeah, and my thing, I'd like to see them on the fly, be prepared and try to exploit mismatches more often, because you'd be surprised at how often Paolo and Franz and even Terrence Ross, those kind of guys, have mismatches that are exploitable, guys that can't guard them, or that are a size mismatch or a quickness mismatch. And I would like to see them each time on the court look at the five and be like, where's our best matchup? Oh, you? Oh, no, you can't cover him. What are you doing? And do that switch. Or if WCJ is on a center and you got somebody on your 4 or 5 pick and roll with Paolo, all of a sudden you're slow behind the center. JaVale McGee on Paolo. No way. No chance. No chance. That's what I'm saying. That's what I want to see down the stretch. And I think that's something that the players can start to see, hopefully in the coming months, is that they're going to recognize those things. Their eyes will widen and be like, oh, snap, they got a center out here. Paolo's going to make this guy look stupid. Or Franz on a center. I mean, like, there's, they cannot stick with him. So that's what I want to see them do. Not saying defensively I want those matchups, but offensively, there's much more meat on the bone that we can get out and help our offense. Now, some of that would be helped if you had a point guard who's kind of trained to see those things. If you had even Jalen Suggs, especially Markelle Fultz out there, there's certain things that Markelle's, no, you come here, set a pick here, and boom, it gets the guy the ball, little guy on the post, and knocks him out and stuff. So that would help, but you'd like to see the players themselves and the coach see those things as well, especially in these tight games, because we're in these games all the time.
Yeah.
Like our team does not give up. They always somehow get within 4 or 5 down the stretch, that kind of stuff.
And I feel like when it comes to closing games, right? This team is young. Part of the reason why they haven't won games is because they don't know how to finish a game in a fourth quarter. We've seen a lot of fourth quarters, like where we've gone into the fourth tight in the fourth, we kind of create that separation. The Mavs game was an example of that. And a couple other games, the Detroit game early, to start the year. What other game was super close? Oh, yeah, the Celtics game at home was super close up until the fourth. Yeah. We just haven't really learned how to close out the fourth yet. And I feel like as we start to break into more plays and more, just the whole type of offense that you and I have been talking about for the last 5 minutes, I feel like as we start to integrate some of that into our system, we will learn how to close out these fourth quarters again. We will be able to take advantage of mismatches and or create mismatches to take advantage of, to get that end of bucket, end of period bucket. And we're not there yet. And obviously our defense has to continue to get way better for us to even consider closing out games as well. You can't close out a game with just offense alone. And the defense has been not great, to say politely. And we'll get there. We'll get there. I do want to go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, like, kind of segueing from that. The one thing I wanted to talk about was what we think some of these lineups are going to look like as guys start coming back from injury. Because obviously, we haven't talked about it yet, but obviously the elephant in the room used to be a joke, now isn't a joke anymore. Is Bobo? Obviously,
that's what I was wanting to transition to for a second too. And before we get into the bigger thing of what you were saying, you mind if I just jump in here real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is like a 30-second add-on, and I think it can add to what we want to transition to. Shout out to Stanley Swanson. That's his @ on Twitter. If you guys aren't following him, he's a Magic fan. He's killing it right now. After every single Magic game, he's been doing a live spaces and just recapping the game with other Magic fans. Anyone can join that's a Magic fan. Listen, we've had non-Magic fans jump up and listen. I've been jumping in and talking a little bit here and there in the spaces as well. And
I tried to join in the other day, but my sound wasn't working at all. But yeah,
he's
cool
killing it. But anyways,
that.
He added me this morning or responded to one of my posts. I don't remember which one. And he just said, Stephen, what are your thoughts on Bol Bol in the starting lineup going forward? Okay. And I first off just flat out said, he's earned it with the way the second unit has played. The last handful of games, he's been the most consistent, playing with the hardest energy, and offensively doing some weird ass shit that happens to be working. And so he's in it. Long term, my thought was I would much rather not have him in the starting lineup. I'd rather have a guard, kind of shift things around a little bit. But then it's, well, maybe what if that guard replaces Terrence Ross and that he goes to the second unit. So we can get into what kind of lineups we want to see here in a second, but I just want to shout out that, there were reasons that I did not like Bol Bol on the Magic team. His offense was not one of them. If you go back and read the post that I had mentioned, I actually said nice things about his offense and that it's probably going to be pretty good. Maybe not exactly those words, but I did say, like, that's not what I'm worried about. And I'm always fine to admit when a player is playing well, right? Or when
glad to be wrong type of stuff.
The reasons why I didn't want him on the team have not been eliminated yet, but I can admit that he has played well offensively and he's starting to fit pretty. He's doing a decent job in the starting lineup. So I just wanted to say that. Now, Malik, I'm going to pass it back to you. Let's get into some of these lineups that you want to talk about.
Well, the one thing I wanted to mention is that I posted a couple of days ago before the Dallas game that there was I think maybe it was after the Dallas game. There's only one player that the Magic had who had a positive net rating and defense rating below 100, and that was Bol Bol, which is just wild to me. And it's even still true after the Dallas game, where it's basically Bol Bol has a positive net rating, and then Paolo has a kind of a even net rating. So for that to be our reality is just wild to me, first of all. But second of all, when you bring back Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz, does that guy replace Terrence Ross as the only guard in the starting lineup? Because, for example, if you put Markelle Fultz instead of Terrence Ross as your starting guard next to all the other bigs, suddenly you'd have a lineup that would have all guys with 6'10" or more wingspans, for example. You just have all long boys because, as you know, Markelle Fultz is 6'4", 6'5", but he's a 6'10" wingspan. So to have that kind of guys on the perimeter, you'd have a playmaker. He would be the one, quote unquote, non-shooter of the bunch, which usually offenses can withstand one non-shooter, especially if they're doing other things out there offensively and defensively, that kind of thing. Or would you want Jalen Suggs to be that one guy? Would you want Bol Bol off the bench being your super sub, backing up the 3 and the 4, maybe a little bit of the 5, being a small ball 5, that kind of stuff. But really, I'm just looking forward to having some possibilities. Right now, we're kind of stuck into playing one way and only that way and trying to figure it out. Bringing guys off the bench and staggering Franz and Paolo to be able to suddenly be able to stagger Franz, Paolo, and Suggs, and then have Bobo in the mix. You could actually have a really exciting team in some of these margins where, we're just giving up, we're having leads early, but then giving them up certain times in the second quarter or the third quarter. Maybe you could sustain, maybe you could even advance leads with a bench unit that could do some things. And also that's what I'm most excited about, is that they're going to have some possibilities, and that I don't know what the right answer is. And that's kind of fun. You know what I'm saying? Because before it was like, well, This is the best lineup. We don't know what's going to happen. When they put that first lineup with Bobo in there, because I was like, okay, RJ is going to have to start. No matter how much they've maligned him, how much they want to, put him in the grave, he has to start now. And when he didn't start, it was like, whoa, we really are not feeling this guy in terms of his future. We can talk about some of that later on and all. But that's the big thing that came to me, was that having those possibilities and seeing what happens. I'm excited to see what happens with the possibilities of guys coming back.
Yeah, I want to touch on this is not even an anti-Bol statement. This is more like just what I want to see off on a lineup, and there's reasons why. I want to, as we get healthier, particularly with Suggs potentially being the first one coming back based off the news that we got today, as I'd like to see Suggs next to Ross in the starting lineup, and Bol go back to the bench. And it's not just on Bol, but mostly because our guard play has been pretty bad. And I do think part of that is because we're almost too big in the guard position, with playing forwards in guard spots, trying to guard some of these quicker guys, and just not being able to operate the defensive system properly. I don't know if that's a size issue or not, but I'd like to let's get some guard versus guard action going on, because I
did like how we played defensively against Charlotte. I mean, the switching with that was kind of a revelation, because they have been killing people offensively.
Charlotte,
and the switches, they were just looking over their shoulder.
That was an outlier, and Charlotte also couldn't hit a shot to save their life, and part of that was our defense. Part of that was they were just having an off night too, because they were getting some good looks that night too. They just weren't hitting shots as well. But I like. Yeah, okay, so that's 1 out of 7 games we've had a good defense. I'm not ready to say let's keep running the same defensive system because we've had one good game. I want to, for that game, we also just gave up 60 points in the first half. Against a guy who put up 30 and a half. But we Dallas, 60, to the Mavs in the first half, and to me that's not good. So I would like to just see. The lineup I'm excited to see is potentially back to a 2-guard lineup, with one of those guards being a plus defender, and a very good defender in Jalen Suggs. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing as he gets back into the rotation. So, I like Franz at the 3. We'll see. Yeah,
I also have liked. I mean, because I very much understood the rationale of saying, let's not put too much on Paolo's plate too early. Yeah. I know he's eating everything we give him. I know he's, just excelling at every role we give him. We give him more, he produces more. And there's a temptation to say, why don't we give him it all? Against Charlotte, they were like, hey, listen, not only are we going to have this lineup, but I know Franz has been the number one kind of ball handler and point guard type guy. Let's put a little more in your hands. Let's have you bring the ball up the court a little more and do those things. And you saw some of those dividends, because whereas Franz has to kind of sometimes turn his back to the basket, kind of post up and dribble around guys in that fashion, Paul was able to dribble it straight up past guys at his size and strength and power, partly because I don't think guys want to get in front of him. I mean, he's 255 pounds, and there's a certain business decision going on when guys are in the open court. Like, okay, do I want to really stand in front of this guy? I think he might run me over. I saw what he did to Corey Joseph, a week and a half ago. Whereas at Franz, you're not worried Franz is gonna, German hammer you at half court. But Paolo just might with those shoulders and that kind of thing. So I think that matters a little bit. So when they gave him the ball more and had him initiate the offense more, he had 7 assists against Charlotte, and he was doing some other things. So it's crazy. Like I said, I if I'm Paolo from the front office, I'm like, hey, listen, just give him a little bit of time. You don't want him to choke. But he's doing so well with whatever they give him. It's also like, hey, listen, we got to make him the point guard because he's so good at it. And with Franz as the secondary or tertiary guy, he can excel at that, and he also can play off ball a little bit and stuff. So anyway, that was something that I noticed in that game as well.
It's so annoying how coach doesn't make those adjustments though. Like when he sees something that works or we see something that works, and he's like, we went right back to Franz being the primary last night, and it didn't, against the Mavs, and it didn't.
You thought so?
Yeah, man, I did think so.
Okay.
I did. At least that's how I saw it. And I only watched the game once. I didn't like sit there and rewatch it and like study it.
Yeah.
That's not. I don't have the time for that with my full-time job and family and stuff. So most games I'm only watching once.
It seemed kind of egalitarian to me. Like last night, it seemed like, hey, whoever can bring the ball up the court, we're doing. I saw ball
bit,
a bunch of times, which was
but
wild
it just felt,
as well.
It just didn't
behind
feel
his back in the open court. So,
but it didn't feel like we stuck to what was working or what worked the night before or the game before, right? So whether we went back to Franz being the primary or it was like distributed between a lot of people, and it's really not who brings the ball up the floor. It's who does the ball go to initiate the offense, right? Unless it's in a fast break situation, the ball eventually gets passed to someone who's then going to.
Well, I mean, I do think it does matter who brings it up, just from a fatigue standpoint and from a just logistics standpoint. That when we had Franz bring it up, there was a certain pulling teeth aspect of it that you didn't see when other guys were bringing the ball up, because guys were able to pressure Franz in a way they couldn't pressure Paolo. That's all I mean.
All I'm saying is, why didn't coach stick with what was good? What worked?
Gotcha.
And this is back to my frustrations about coach. I think he's a fine player development coach. I have yet to be impressed with his game management decisions yet.
Sure, that's fair.
And the systems that he's operating in. And so that's where I get frustrated often with that. I mean, that's been my biggest frustration this entire season is coach. But that's okay. So we've been let's get to our last topic, because we've been going for almost an hour here. The last thing we wanted to talk about is RJ Hampton, who just had his best game of the season last night. He I'm going to pull up his stats as we talk about this. Yeah. But
15 points.
A bunch of players had their options picked up for their third and fourth years. So Magic picked up the option for Chuma Okeke, which, if we're declining options, I'm not sure why his was picked up. But ultimately, I think all of them should have been picked up. But Chuma Okeke's option got picked up. Fran's option got picked up. Suggs' option got picked up. RJ Hampton's option did not get picked up, going for his fourth season. Had a little bit mixed results or mixed feelings on Twitter about that. And then you also, that same day, or maybe it was the next day following up, you come to find out that he's also leaving his agency with Mike Miller and going to go find a new agent, going into what's going to be his free agent summer this coming year. So Mike, I'll just pass it to you. What were your thoughts on them declining the option and picking up some of the others, and also RJ like switching agencies?
Well, it was interesting to me. I kind of jokingly put out a couple of fantasy questions that I wanted to ask Coach Mosley. I think one of them, I forget what the first one was, but I know that the follow-up one was, Coach Mosley, based on your regular season rotation and the fact that even with guards out, RJ Hampton is not seeing the floor with significant minutes, are you in basically de facto been telling management not to pick up his fourth year option? And I was kind of, sign Coach Mosley. That I was jokingly saying that. And once I saw that the Magic did not pick up his option, I was like, well, I guess I don't have to ask that question anymore. See if Kobe will ask it for me. See if Luke Hetchick will ask it for me. The question has been answered in that, yes, we do not believe in him. Coach Mosley has emphatically said, this is not a guy that we should be picking up the option for. This is not a guy that there's a future for on this team. So to me, that the way they played him, the rotations that they did, kind of were obvious about how they felt about him. That again, when you had so many guys out, and he still couldn't get on the court, and even on that Friday, Cole Anthony's out as well, and you're like, let's start Bol. Because I was joking, like, hey, like almost like the Undertaker gif where he sits up in the grave. And I was joking that that's going to be RJ Hampton brushing the grave dirt off himself. It's like, oh, you can't kill me. I'm in the starting lineup. But they're like, no. Actually, even with these injuries, you're still going to be on the bench. And if that's the way that the team feels about him, the coaching staff feels about him in terms of his potential, I think it makes sense to cut that bait now rather than going through the motions and saying, hey, let's keep him on for next year, whatever it is and stuff. That doesn't mean that he can't be back. Obviously, the Magic can still, pay up to $4.2 million as a starting salary. And there have been guys that have come back even recently. Furkan Korkmaz, we mentioned, Kevon Looney, both returned to their teams even after their options were declined. It is definitely more unlikely because you have kind of shown your hand.
Yeah,
Magic could have brought back Mario Hezonja too, but
those needs
to me,
for those teams were a little bit different with Looney, and it's like the Warriors needed a center. Sure. There's no way we knew as soon as they declined it, he was coming back unless some other team blew them out of the water. Like we knew that was going to happen. There's the roster need is not as glaring as some of those other ones where it was understood that they were going to come back anyways.
I guess I'm saying I don't mind making the choice. If you don't believe in the guy, if he's not someone that you like, we definitely want him to be a core part of our team going forward. Just to then say, hey, listen, we're going to make this choice and go from there. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think too many teams just based on inertia, just based on pride, because they drafted the guy, like, oh no, we're picking it up no matter what, and don't really analyze it at all. It's an unasked question about whether they're going to pick up the option. They pick it up every time, whether they believe in the guy or not. I think I kind of applaud the Magic for saying, hey, listen, we're going to take the tough questions and look at each guy, whether we want to, invest in them or not, and then go from there. So I appreciate that aspect of it. I do understand people who are frustrated by it, but, like I said, I think if they wouldn't believe in him, I think this was the right move.
We definitely have a little bit of different views on it, but I don't think we're like all far off. Like I personally didn't see RJ as like this long-term piece for the Magic. Like, at best he could have been like a decent rotation player for us, but I didn't expect him to be on this team. If he got a second contract from us very long into that, just because there's too many other reasons. At some point you're going to bring in veterans, or like this coming year, we potentially will draft 2 to 3 players with our potential 2 first rounders and some seconds. Yep. Like, granted, probably realistically just 2. I don't expect us to draft.
I hope it's 3.
We'll get into the draft stuff another day, though. But my thought was, okay, he's likely going to get traded this season, anyways. He just balled out. He had his little revenge game, but let me just give some stats. All right. And then I want to talk about, after the stats, I want to talk about why I think this was not a great decision. Not earth-shattering decision. The Magic did not hurt themselves majorly by doing this, but just why I don't agree with it. He is almost in the 50-40-90 club. He is shooting 45, not almost in the 50-40-90 club. Sorry, misread that. He's shooting 45% from the field. He's shooting 47% from 3. He's shooting 88% from the free throw line on a 54% efficiency rating. Granted, that's a small sample size. We're 7 games in. He's got a DMP in one of those games. His biggest negative plus minus was a -6. Granted, plus minus is a weird thing, but you kind of need to get some sample size on it. And the sample sizes, he's got mostly -2s and 3s. He's got a -5 in there, -6, and a +7. So he hasn't been like god awful. He hasn't been amazing. He's kind of just been hovering around just below neutral in that range. And So here's the reason why I don't love it, right? I'm not upset. Again, he was probably going to get traded anyways, but here's my thing. Had he, let's say he keeps up this play, comes to earth a little bit, but is still shooting like 42% from three, still hitting decent free throws. He's got a pretty low turnover. He's only had 3 turnovers all season. He's only had 6 personal fouls all season. Granted, he's played in limited minutes, 2 games over 20 minutes, a couple games in the teens, 2 games in the 7 to 10 minute range. So a small sample size, but let's say he keeps up his play and he's starting to play pretty good. And the Magic are like, well, cool. You've gained some value here. Well, now the Magic have actually lost a little bit of leverage, not a lot, but a little bit of leverage by saying, hey, now we can't trade you a player that you're going to have control over on their next contract. He's going to hit free agency no matter what. The receiving team does not have the option to bring on this player and be like, you know what? We like you. We're going to
invest in you. Yeah.
We're going to invest in you. No, he's going to hit free agency no matter what. No one has that option to, he could hit free agency. We can just match whatever he hits if we like him enough. So that's where I think the Magic lost value. Not that they lost some like long-term piece, but that they might have had a tiny bit more leverage within conversations to, now maybe they could have potentially had like an unprotected second, where now maybe they're going to get a protected second out of this or something like that. Or he could have been a little bit of a better asset in a larger trade package than what he is now, which is an expiring contract. So that was my thought process on it. I wasn't upset that they don't see him as a long-term piece. I do think it is a little premature because, again, like I said, the numbers, they're kind of impressive, and I don't think they've necessarily given him a defined role to excel at. And we saw him in preseason this year have a defined role and play pretty well. We have seen him in a handful of games have a defined role and play pretty well in that. But he's kind of like been shafted a little bit with do this, do that, do this, do that, do that, and like not have consistency around it. And like you say all the time, he's hardly played with a good point guard next to him. And so it's almost been a little bit hard to evaluate his long-term growth, in my opinion. Not saying he's going to be some superstar, but could he be a really nice second unit player? I don't know if the Magic gave him a fair shot to get there. So that's sort of like my counter feelings.
I think I'd also say overall that I do think the Magic have been pretty fair to RJ. You look at last year, 69 games gave him, extended minutes in every game almost. 14 starts. I think there were a lot of times in games where you're like, man, why is RJ out there? Why is RJ getting these minutes? And he got those minutes consistently to develop, to sink or swim, and to get that on-ball reps that you desperately need in the NBA to be able to develop. He got those with the Magic last year to be able to do what he would with them. He got the Summer League tryout this past year to see if he could, show something for the team at that point as well. Obviously they didn't like enough of what he showed in the preseason to kind of carve out a role for the regular season, especially as guys went out to him to still not play. It's like, damn, they are really not feeling this guy and all. So I guess I would push back on saying that he wasn't given, even that fair shot, that kind of thing. I do understand what you're saying about losing value. I would not be surprised to see him stay with the Magic all year, though. I don't think it's something where there's internal pressure to move him.
Like, he's not coming back next season, in my opinion. If they don't, pick it up,
I understand that. But what I'm saying is,
they should trade him.
But it's what I'm saying is like to have him on the bench as a guy you trust, a guy is a known quantity.
Trade him.
I don't think
open up the roster spot.
I don't think that's less than anything. I mean, there's
do him the solid. Do him the solid. Let him go have an opportunity to show off somewhere else instead of like as his team gets healthy, just sit on the take up a seat on the bench. Do him the solid. You already don't believe in him. You're not going to bring him back next year. We know this. So
I think if it helps the team, I can see him doing it. I don't see them being like, man, we got to find a way to get RJ out of here. This is a priority for us.
I hope they trade him at this point. I don't really see there's a reason to keep him around if there's other guys you could do a better service for the team to have them sit at the bench. There's unsigned veterans right now that you could go pick up for the minimum that could do a better job than that. And while you give this young man a chance to go show off for his next contract for his next team elsewhere where he might actually get some playing time. I do disagree a little bit on the development aspect, but it's RJ Hampton. We don't need to go back and forth that deep about it.
Yeah.
We can.
I like the kid. He's a good guy. He's funny. He's intelligent.
Yeah.
I
like him.
I'm not gonna be surprised to see him succeed. I'm sorry that hasn't worked out with us.
Yeah.
And even going back to the Aaron Gordon trade with Denver, and some people were like saying, "Oh, well, now that's a bad trade now. When all the dust is settled, it's not a good trade." And what I would say is that Gary Harris is literally 1 year older than Aaron Gordon, and he has now become part of this team. Now it's on a short-term contract at the moment, but to me, a trade that was Aaron Gordon for Gary Harris and a first-round pick isn't all that super lopsided, even if you take RJ Hampton out of the equation. I still think that when the dust is settled, it's not a super lopsided trade. Is it better if RJ Hampton becomes a star? No doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, draft picks
the way it is now, it's pretty good.
Draft picks, including extremely raw draft picks that need a bit more, not on his NBA ready and need more time, like Hampton was. They're a little bit more risky, and there's
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
He was almost a second round pick. He was picked in the 20s, so it's not like he was a lot.
We were betting on Denver's eye of picking out talent in the first round to kind of show its way out. But
we'll find out in a year or two if the Magic. We'll find out in a year or two if the Magic made the right choice here. If he goes off to another team and really does well, then we might be kicking ourselves in the butt by, man, we lost that really nice wing player that we could have had. Yeah. But
I would definitely be watching.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll likely replace him. His minutes are going to get taken by the next guys we draft, and they were already starting to get taken by guys like Caleb Houston here and whatnot. So, anyways, we've been talking for a little over an hour. We were going to try and keep this a short episode, and that definitely did not happen. So, but I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, Malik. Coming up,
it's a fun time of year, man.
Dude, for real, and we had mentioned this earlier. So, coming up, Magic fans, next couple of games, probably before you hear us, you're going to have Oklahoma on Wednesday, in Oklahoma. You're going to have the Warriors on Tuesday. I'm thinking today is Tuesday. Today is Monday. You're going to have the Warriors on Thursday at home. Go show out there. Go see Steph Curry. I've seen him quite a few times. He's a lot of fun. Go check it out if you have the ability to. Sacramento Kings rolling into town too. De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis. There's some Keegan Murray. Some really cool guys on that team too. Go out to these home games on this road trip this homestand that's coming up. The Magic team needs you there. The players want you there. They want you showing up for them. And
the UK guys are in town. Say hi to them.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So, all right. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Peace.